I swear, that man is dangerous, Jumai said with a mischievous smile as she and the other assistants gathered near the window of Kasham's luxurious fashion house. It didn't matter that it was morning or that their boss was around. Knock was passing by, and that was an occasion worth dropping everything for. They abandoned the lace gown they had been working on, gawking helplessly as he strode past. Just look at the way he walks, one of them whispered, clutching the window frame. Like he knows we're watching. Because he does, another giggled. No wonder women fight over him, the second assistant added. Jumai scoffed. You think it's just his looks? Wait, you've heard the stories too? The second assistant asked, eyes widening. I thought they were exaggerations. Exaggerations? The third assistant lowered her voice like she was about to share a secret. They say he's very endowed in that department, and his skills unmatched. That's why women can't resist him. Ha! I'd give anything for a taste. I don't even mind fighting, the second assistant declared. Yours is a small case, Jumai teased, extending her neck for one last look. I think I got pregnant just watching him pass by. A ripple of laughter passed through the group as they dissolved into hushed giggles, their work completely forgotten. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, the third assistant said, suddenly serious. He's already engaged. The laughter died. No way, they chorused. Engaged? Yes, and you won't believe who to. The ladies fell silent as if their silence could somehow change the truth. He's engaged to Kuyet. They paused and looked at each other, eyes wide with surprise. Wait, the same Kuyet? The virgin? Jumai whispered. I thought he liked experienced women. The second assistant added, scandalized. Their whispers intensified, each new detail making the engagement seem more unbelievable. Then, from behind them, a voice sliced through the air like a blade. Is this what I pay you for? The women spun around, startled. Kasham, their boss, had been listening to every word. She stood a few feet away, her signature no-nonsense look fixed on them like a hawk. We were just, I know what you were doing. Her voice was firm. Get back to work. The assistants scattered, heads bowed, trying to suppress nervous giggles as they rushed to their stations. People are getting engaged, and instead of thinking about how to sell them wedding dresses, you're gossiping? Gossiping? Will that pay your bills? Or do you think this fashion house runs on gossip? Sorry, Ma, we are sure she will come here for a dress. Jumai apologized, trying to save the situation. Kasham exhaled, slow and controlled. Then she turned back to the window. Nak had disappeared down the street, but her gaze lingered, this time on Kuyet's grand family home in the distance. 1 week later, whispers spread through Kasham Lux once again. She's here, Jumai murmured, her eyes flickering toward the entrance. Who? Another assistant asked. Kuyet and her friend. The air in the fashion house shifted. Kuyet's arrival sent a ripple through the room, but the real shock wasn't just her presence. It was the reason behind it. She was here to choose a dress for her wedding to the man every lady wished was hers. The assistant exchanged glances before one of them rushed off to Kasham's office. Kasham looked up from her desk as she absorbed the news. Then a slow smile curved her lips. Make sure she's treated like a queen, she instructed, already rising to her feet. She smoothed her dress and with effortless grace made her way to the showroom, where Kuyet stood before a mirror, running her fingers over the delicate lace of a wedding gown. Bariat, what do you think? Kuyet asked, turning to her friend. Bariat, lounging on one of the velvet chairs, tilted her head. It's beautiful, but the neckline is perfection. Kasham's voice interjected smoothly as she stepped into the room. Kuyet turned, surprised. Kasham, you didn't have to come out personally. It's nothing serious, just a little window shopping. Kasham placed a hand over her chest in mock dismay. How could I not? This is one of the most important days of your life. I'm sure you'll pick a date soon. Let me help you find the perfect dress. Kuyet's face lit up. That's so kind of you. Kasham played her role flawlessly. She hovered at Kuyet's side, adjusting fabric, fastening pearl necklaces, and offering expert opinions on every little detail, like a devoted sister. She even offered to help with some of the wedding preparations, making sure Kuyet felt special, cherished. But something about the experience unsettled Bariat. It was as if she were being pushed to the sidelines. You're glowing, Kasham murmured as she secured the final touches on one of the gowns. Kuyet exhaled happily. I can't believe how helpful you've been. You're so kind. I don't know what I would have done without you. Later, as the assistants wrapped up, Bariat pulled Kuyet aside. Be careful, she warned in a low voice. Kuyet frowned. What? Bariat hesitated, glancing at Kasham, who was across the room speaking softly to an assistant. Something about her feels off. Kuyet rolled her eyes. Oh, please, don't start. I'm serious. You barely knew her last week, and now she's acting like your fairy godmother. She's just being nice. Maybe you should try it. Bariat exhaled sharply. Just don't trust her too quickly, Kuyet scoffed. Someone's jealous that I finally have another friend. Bariat's face darkened. If that's what you think, then you don't know me at all. Anyway, I have something to attend to. I'll text you later. She hugged Kuyet briefly, then turned and walked out, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Kuyet sighed as she watched Bariat leave, a small frown forming on her lips. But Kasham quickly pulled her back into the moment with her bubbly energy, and soon Kuyet forgot all about her friend. From that day forward, Kasham made sure she was always within reach, offering Kuyet fashion advice, helping her pick out wedding accessories, and lending a listening ear whenever she needed one. With each visit to the fashion house, Kuyet's admiration for her grew. You're honestly a blessing, Kuyet gushed one afternoon as Kasham shared wedding planning tips. They were now in constant communication, and even Nak had spoken to Kasham over the phone. Kasham smiled warmly. Oh, please, you deserve to feel like a queen on your big day. You've done so much for me, Kuyet insisted. I want Nak to meet you properly so he can thank you himself. Kasham hesitated. Oh, that's not necessary. This is what I do for any friend. Oh, please, I insist. You've done so much for me. Let me do something for you at least this once. Kasham was silent for a moment before blurting. Are you sure? I wouldn't want to intrude on your time together. Not at all, Kuyet laughed. Besides, you two will get along. I know it. Kasham gave a soft, almost shy nod. Well, if you insist. And just like that, they set a date. The night arrived quickly. The three met at an intimate lounge, and Kuyet, beaming, looped her arm through Nak's. Nak, this is Kasham, the woman who's been keeping me sane through all this wedding stress. Nak extended a hand, his gaze calm. Nice to finally meet you in person. Kasham took his hand with a smile. Likewise. The evening flowed effortlessly. Kuyet couldn't have been happier. Her best friend and her fiancé seemed to get along so well, deepening her appreciation for Kasham's kindness. As the waiter placed another round of drinks on the table, Kuyet's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and groaned. I forgot I promised my cousin I'd call her tonight. She wanted to go over some bridal shower ideas. Kasham's eyes widened slightly. Oh no, don't let me keep you. You should take it. The earlier you start planning these things, the better. Kuyet hesitated. I don't want to leave you two. Please, Kasham waved a dismissive hand. It's just a quick call, right? Besides, I still need to properly grill Nak, and I don't need you begging on his behalf. She grinned teasingly. Nak chuckled. Yeah, go handle your call. Kasham and I will hold down the fort. Kuyet sighed in defeat. Fine, fine. I'll step outside where it's quieter. I won't take long. She pressed a quick kiss to Nak's cheek before stepping away. As soon as she disappeared through the lounge doors, Kasham turned to Nak. Finally, she said, swirling her drink. Now we can talk properly. She eased onto the bar stool, crossing her legs with effortless grace. I see why Kuyet is so taken with you. Nak chuckled, taking a sip of his drink. I'd hope so. She's an amazing woman. Kasham tilted her head slightly, studying him. You must really love her. His gaze flickered for the briefest second, but he didn't say anything. She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice just enough to make it feel like a secret. Can I be honest? Nak arched a brow. I wouldn't expect anything less. You don't seem like the type to settle down, Kasham said, her tone light, almost teasing. I mean, the stories I've heard. Nak's smirk didn't fade. You shouldn't believe everything you hear. Oh, I don't. Kasham took a slow sip of her drink, letting the pause linger. I prefer to judge people myself. Still, Nak gave nothing away. He was too careful. But Kasham needed to shake that control. With the perfect flick of her wrist, she tipped her glass forward, sending a wave of cold whiskey straight onto his crotch. Oh my God, she gasped, reaching for a napkin in feigned panic. I'm so sorry. She moved quickly, dabbing at his wet trousers, lingering just a second too long. Nock tensed. Just like that, the air between them shifted. Their eyes met, locked in a silent understanding. She saw it, the flicker of awareness in his expression, the realization that Kasham wasn't as harmless as she seemed. Then, Kasham, what happened? Kuyet's voice shattered the tension, her concern cutting through the moment. Kasham straightened immediately, bending to pick up the fallen glass, her face a perfect mask of innocence. Nothing. Nock said smoothly before she could answer, his voice light. I knocked over Kasham's drink. Looks like I owe her another one. Kuyet sighed, relieved. You scared me for a second. Nock chuckled, pressing a kiss to her temple. All good, love. But Kasham wasn't looking at Kuyet anymore. She was looking at Nock, and in his eyes, she saw it, that lingering thought, that mark the moment had left on him, just like it had on her. That night at the bar changed everything. The way Nock had looked at her, the way he hadn't pulled away when her hand lingered. Kasham had seen the hesitation in his eyes, the silent war within him. He was intrigued, tempted, and she knew exactly how to push a man over the edge. Their first meeting after that was innocent enough. Just a casual, I was in the neighborhood, an easy smile, a lingering gaze. But one visit turned into another. The tension simmered until it finally snapped. Kasham hadn't expected to feel this consumed. Their affair burned hotter than she had imagined, each secret meeting more reckless than the last. Behind Kuyet's back, they explored each other with a hunger that thrilled her. Every stolen moment, every whispered confession, every time Nock gave in to her, she felt victorious. She had him, or so she thought. One afternoon, Kasham traced lazy circles on Nock's bare chest, her voice soft and sultry. You should tell Kuyet the truth, she murmured. We don't need to pretend anymore. Nock stiffened. That's not happening. She propped herself up, studying his face. Why not? He exhaled sharply, running a hand over his face. Have you lost your mind? We agreed this is just a fling. That's a no-go area, Kasham. The words hit her like a slap. She sat up. A no-go area? She echoed. You love this, us. I know you do. So why are you still with her? He didn't answer immediately, and the silence gnawed at her. For the first time, doubt filled her mind. Why won't he leave her? Kasham had always known how to get what she wanted. She had won Nock's body. Now she needed his heart, his full commitment. And if love wasn't enough to pull him away from Kuyet, then she'd use something even more binding, a child. She saw the pregnancy as her ultimate victory. It was the one thing Kuyet couldn't compete with, the one move that would force Nock to choose her. He would have no choice but to marry her. So when the time was right, she told him, I'm pregnant, Nock. She expected a rush of emotions, shock, excitement, maybe even fear. But instead, she was met with silence. Nock just stared at her, his expression unreadable. Seconds passed, stretching painfully long. Did you hear me? Kasham pressed, her voice tighter now. His jaw clenched, and finally he exhaled, dragging a hand over his face. This doesn't change anything. Kasham's stomach twisted. What do you mean? You're going to be a father. We should... He cut her off with a dry, humorless chuckle. You think that's enough to make me leave Kuyet? His voice was low, almost bitter. Then he shook his head. Kasham, you don't get it. It's not just about love. Kuyet's father has plans for us. He's going to set me up. My future is tied to her. Kasham felt her chest tighten. She couldn't bear the thought of losing Nock to someone else. So that was it? It wasn't love keeping him there. It was security. Her mind raced in several directions. She couldn't imagine being without Nock. She softened her voice, stepping closer. Come on, you don't need Kuyet's father, she murmured, her fingers grazing his chest. You need me. Nock's eyes flickered as he edged away from her. Would you rather be a daddy's boy, controlled by her family, or be a man of your own? I have a thriving business. Together, we can do great things. Think about it. With me, you wouldn't just be someone's son-in-law. You'd be your own man. She saw the internal battle playing out on his face, and for a moment, she thought she had won. But then Nock's gaze drifted, his mind slipping into memory. He was back in Kuyet's family's grand home, sitting stiffly on the plush leather couch as her father spoke with quiet authority. Kuyet, your mother told me you registered for a baking competition. I've told you to stop all that and focus on your studies, the man said, dismissing her talk of baking with a wave of his hand. Once you're done, I'll set up a company for you. We have big plans for you, and we need you to cooperate. Kuyet smiled politely, But Nock had noticed the way her fingers fidgeted slightly in her lap. It showed that baking was more than a hobby to her. It was a passion she wasn't ready to let go of. Then her father had turned to him. And you, Nock? What do you do? Nock had frozen. He had nothing to say. The silence had stretched, thick, suffocating, until Kuyet had smoothly stepped in, her voice light and reassuring. He's still figuring things out, Daddy. He has great ideas. Her father nodded, unimpressed. But he didn't dismiss Nock because he was his beloved daughter's choice. Now, as the memory faded, Nock exhaled sharply, glancing back at Kasham. She was offering him everything. But was it enough? Kasham watched the hesitation in his eyes and clenched her fists. He wanted her. She knew he did. But Nock was a man torn between greed and comfort, unable to make a choice. And if he wouldn't pick, she would make the decision for him. So she went straight to Kuyet. The moment the words left Kasham's lips, Kuyet felt the world tilt beneath her. Pregnant for Nock? How? Her best friend and the man she loved, betraying her in the cruelest way possible? The shock hit her like a blow to the chest, knocking the breath out of her. For a moment she froze, unable to form words. Then the pain rushed in, burning hot and unbearable. You're lying, she choked out, but her voice wavered. Kasham's smirk was cruel. I'm not. Then she hung up. Kuyet's stomach twisted. She wanted to scream, to fight, to undo the last few moments. But the truth was out now, suffocating her. When she confronted Nock, his silence confirmed everything. He didn't deny it. He didn't even try. Her heart shattered into pieces. Just moments ago, she had been counting down to the happiest day of her life. In the blink of an eye, she was plunged into a nightmare, experiencing a kind of pain she never imagined possible. Her father found her curled up in her room, her body racked with silent sobs. He tried to comfort her, but what words could fix this kind of betrayal? In desperation, he called Bariat, her childhood friend, who rushed to her side the moment she heard. Bariat held her when she cried and reminded her to eat when she refused to even think about food. Her father believed she needed a change of scenery, somewhere far from the reminders of her pain. He booked a luxury cruise, a chance for Kuyet to escape, even if just for a little while. He made sure Bariat went with her, not just as a travel companion, but as someone who could watch over her when he couldn't. But the ocean could not wash away betrayal. While other passengers laughed and enjoyed the cruise's luxuries, Kuyet spent most of her time curled up in their cabin, staring out at the endless blue. Bariat tried everything, dragging her to events, encouraging her to meet new people, but Kuyet's heart wasn't in it. She drifted through the days, lost in her pain. Worried, Bariat kept her father updated. She's not getting better, she confided one evening over the phone. She barely eats. She barely speaks. We need to try something else. Her father sighed heavily. She already has a therapist. What else can we do? Then Bariat remembered Kuyet's passion for baking. The quaint pastry shops in Paris they had dreamed of visiting one day. The fancy pastry courses they had once hoped to take. That was it. She informed Kuyet's father and they put their heads together. By the time the cruise ended, the plan was in motion. One evening, as Kuyet sat by the ship's deck, lost in thought, her phone rang. It was her father. I remembered something, he said gently. You always loved baking. Kuyet's breath hitched. So, he continued, I arranged something for you. A trip to Paris. We made an itinerary for you, including a luxurious baking experience, among other things. I don't care if you become a baker, Kuyet. I just want you healed and happy. She blinked in shock. Paris, baking. Her stuck-up father? For the first time in weeks, something flickered inside Kuyet, a tiny ember of light in the darkness. Bariat squeezed her hand, smiling. I think you should go. Kuyet swallowed, looking out at the horizon. Maybe, just maybe, this was the fresh start she needed. Meanwhile, Kasham was possessed by passion and wasted no time. With her pregnancy as leverage, she pushed for the wedding, ensuring that Nock had no room to hesitate. The moment he said, I do, she felt triumphant. He was hers now, fully, legally, undeniably. Their honeymoon was everything she had imagined, luxury, passion, and the sweet thrill of victory. Nock was attentive, charming, and endlessly satisfying in bed. Kasham basked in the glow of their new life, convinced she had secured the perfect future. But the illusion didn't last long. The first signs of trouble were small, easy to ignore. A pile of his clothes left where he had stepped out of them. Dishes in the sink, untouched, sleeping in until noon while she handled errands. She provided for them both and still carried the weight of running their home. At first, Casham brushed it off. He's just adjusting. Marriage takes time. Besides, he made up for it in other ways. But the laziness only grew worse. Days turned into weeks, and with dawning horror, she realized Knock had no intention of changing. He had always been this way. She had just been too blinded by obsession to see it. Knock had never known struggle. He had no idea how to make a woman feel loved, valued, or respected outside the bedroom. Even there, sometimes, he was more focused on his own pleasure than hers. From the moment he was old enough to charm women, life had been easy for him. There was always someone willing to cater to him, to pay for him, to excuse his lack of ambition. Kasham had merely joined the long list of enablers. Then the baby came. She had hoped, prayed, that fatherhood would change him, that he would finally step up. Instead, he became worse, one of the most irresponsible fathers she had ever seen. While she spent sleepless nights feeding and soothing their child, Knox slept undisturbed. While she balanced motherhood with running her business, he lounged around, scrolling through his phone, making empty promises to figure things out soon. The weight of it all pressed down on her, suffocating. This wasn't the life she had envisioned. Every day, regret gnawed at her. She had fought so hard to have Knock, convinced he was a prize worth winning. Now, she saw the truth. She had shackled herself to a man who would never be more than what he already was, lazy, entitled, and utterly useless. She thought about leaving. The idea crept into her mind more and more, a tempting escape. But how could she? She had orchestrated this. She had broken Kwiat's heart, turned her own life upside down, and tied herself to Knock in the most permanent way possible. Walking away would mean facing the shame, the whispers, the judgment. She wasn't ready. So she stayed. She learned the hard way that love and marriage were about more than a few stolen moments in the bedroom. As if that wasn't enough, she lost business deals because of the rumors, the whispers of how she had stolen a bride's husband. Meanwhile, Kwiat had long moved on. Paris had opened her eyes to an entirely new world. What had begun as the worst chapter of her life turned into the greatest blessing. She spent her days immersed in baking, learning from world-class chefs, crafting delicate pastries, and perfecting recipes that once felt like distant dreams. Her evenings were filled with laughter, wine tastings, and deep conversations with people from all walks of life. Her heart still ached at times, but she had learned to fall in love with life again, to pursue her passion without limits. One day, Bariat called. "You won't believe it," she said. "Knock and Kasham's marriage is a disaster." Kwiat had a full circle moment. What had once felt like betrayal had in truth been a gift in disguise. If Kasham hadn't seduced Knock, if she hadn't exposed the affair, Kwiat might have married him. She might have been the one trapped, carrying the weight of a man who only knew how to take. Kasham lived a very different reality. She had won the man, but lost everything else. The once coveted Knock, the man women had fought to have, had become nothing more than dead weight. She had dreamed of a grand life, of passion and happiness. Instead, she woke up every day to a man who drained her. In the end, Kwiat's heartbreak had been her greatest blessing, and Kasham's victory, her greatest curse. Kasham, like many women, had been blinded by the wrong things. Her obsession with passion clouded her judgment, leading her to betray an innocent woman, only to end up trapped in a life she never truly wanted. But what do you think? Was Kasham wrong for pursuing Kwiat's man since they weren't married yet? Or was it the fact that she befriended Kwiat just to betray her that made it unforgivable?